Welcome back to the channel. All right. Now, this is going to be a very interesting time for a lot of you, probably one of the most important videos we're going to make. And that's because a lot of people have not been through an event like this. So, some of you who have been around the crypto space for a while, you're going to be ready for this. You're going to be aware that these kind of things can happen, and you're going to take advantage of it. Some people are just going to be incredibly scared because a lot of people have invested a lot of money in crypto assets, and today they have seen those investments drop by a massive amount. The first rule to keep in mind, okay, is that you only take a loss, you only realize a loss when you sell. It's a very, very key thing to remember. And the first rule of investing is to buy when there's fear and sell into optimism. Think about that, repeat that to yourself. It is a very important rule to remember on days like this. Now, when you see your portfolio drop this much, you have to keep that in mind that you're only losing when you sell. Granted, could it keep going further? Yes, it could, right? Nothing I tell you is financial advice. I'm not telling you not to sell. I'm not telling you to buy. But what I am saying is that at this point in time, you have either the opportunity to buy at a discount or you possibly have the opportunity to sell at a loss. Out of those two opportunities, I know which one I like. And personally, I have been buying this dip like there's no tomorrow. And the reason I've been doing that is because nothing has changed, right? The only thing that's changed is that people are scared. So the markets have changed sentiment. That's changed. But that has nothing to do with the underlying use case for things like Bitcoin and for DeFi assets. So Bitcoin is a store of value, right? That case, Zazon, thank you for following. I appreciate you. That use case has not changed at all. If that use case has not changed, Bitcoin being a store of value, then what are we really talking about here? What we're talking about is that essentially people saw a dip happen, they got scared they're going to lose, and they kept selling. Now, what do you think people are doing that are sitting there with millions and billions of dollars wanting to invest in Bitcoin long term, right? They have a couple of options. They could put their money in savings accounts or bonds and get near zero interest. That's an option. They could put it in the stock market where they'll never achieve returns like Bitcoin can give you, as it is historically shown. They could keep it in dollars and they could literally just lose money to inflation. They could watch their money burn. The fact of the matter is that we're living in a time where global economies are doing the same thing. They are all printing money. They are all creating liquidity. When they create that liquidity, it generates inflation. We're already starting to see that inflation happen. So in my opinion, Bitcoin itself is still the best investment asset that's available right now. And the fact that it's on, it went down to more than a 50% discount means that people are going to be putting money in. And I have a feeling that when we do see the recovery begin, it's going to continue up much further than it was before. Now, granted, I'll say it once again, not financial advice, because anything can happen in these markets, right? People doing TA online like myself, people giving information about what they feel Bitcoin's going to do. It's all speculation. This is my speculation. All right, now we're going to get to the charts and we're going to take a look at what exactly has happened. All right, so let's do that first. And we're going to start off with the daily chart. Now, this is the daily chart for Bitcoin. When we look at this daily chart, the first thing that we'll see, which you always see when you have a move like this, is a death cross. The death cross occurred up here with this moving average dropping below this. So that's basically the 20 exponential moving average dropping below the 50 exponential moving average. It's now also dropped below the 100 exponential moving average. As this continues to move down, even if it trades sideways between 35 to 40,000 now and starts recovering, this is going to continue to drop until the price is above 48 to 50K, where this 20 exponential moving averages now. So the death cross is the first indication. We all saw it, and the only issue is you can never predict how far down a drop is going to go. Especially in this scenario, you don't know when support is going to kick in. The one thing that we know is there was support at the 40K level. We saw it stop there and trade there briefly. When it drops here, it definitely got support at 20K. So the next thing to look at is our Fibonacci's, right? The Fibonacci retracements give you support and resistance levels. So we're going to look at those Fibonacci retracements for Bitcoin, and we're going to take a look at what they're telling us. So I have a number of different Fibonacci's here, okay? So the first thing is this Fibonacci. This is more of a short-term Fibonacci. This doesn't really work out for what we're seeing because this is too short-term. So we're going to get rid of this. Then I have a midterm Fibonacci. Okay, this is a little bit longer at a higher local low. This doesn't really work out either because once again, it only told us our golden pocket's support area. It didn't show us anything that put a bottom. So what do? We go out further, okay? As we go out further to the long term, we see this Fibonacci. Now this Fibonacci makes a little more sense, and you'll see what I've done with this Fibonacci is I have brought it all the way back to the crash in March. Okay, now is this the most accurate Fibonacci to use? This is the longest one I have. It is not a bad one because if you look at the crash in March as a bottom and then take the peak as a top, this Fibonacci tells us that for this entire cycle thus far, the maximum drop we should see is somewhere between 25,124 and 27,000. We didn't quite get there yet. So the first thing I'll tell you is this, that if this drop is not over, then we can expect the possibility, a slim possibility of coming down to these levels. And the reason I say that is because once you reach these levels, Bitcoin becomes too much of a value investment. At that point, people that are coming in with big money, they are going to want to buy because they're getting it at a massive discount. Even now they're getting it as a massive discount. That's why you're seeing so much buying happening. I mean, let's go back to the 4-hour and we look at the 4-hour chart and look at the amount of buying that's occurring. This got bought back up from 29,000 all the way back up to 35 and actually higher. It got bought all the way back up to probably around 36.5 or maybe even 37 when, you know, we can take a look at the hourly and see exactly. Yeah, so it actually, from that level at 30K, it got bought all the way back up to 37, and then it hit this Fibonacci line here. So we see that this Fibonacci line that we have, this green line, actually did come back as an area of support or contention. So we want to see how it works out. But this is by no means a recovery. It has not recovered yet. In order for Bitcoin to really recover, when you start seeing that on the chart, what it's going to look like is somewhat of a V shape. When you see that V shape start occurring, that is when you have a good idea that a bottom is in, because people have started buying up all of the Bitcoin supply in anticipation that it's not going to go any further. But I would definitely say that this is an important level between 25 and 27, because that level, all the way historically from March, the Fibonacci retracement tells us is a very long-term support level. Now, I want to go back to the daily chart and look at a couple of other things, okay? So one of the things you have to do in technical analysis when you don't have enough data, and you just don't have enough data with a drop like this, is you have to speculate. So if we speculate and we unlock this Fibonacci, I'm actually going to move it back because I like to have this at the level it is now. We have to see where would have been the bottom if we've already touched so if we take the price down to around 9K as the bottom, then we have technically already touched what would be the support level at 30K, the golden pocket. Now, is this a possibility that this Fibonacci could be accurate? It definitely is. So the golden pocket could really be anywhere between 25 and 30,000. That entire area could be our golden pocket. And the reason for that is, I mean, this would actually be a little bit more likely as a support level. And the reason I say that is because it did not go down to this 3,000 level very long. When it dipped down here, it was a very quick bottom. And then, you know, over the course of a month, it recovered very fast. So either one of these could be the point that we look at. We could look at the one that we have now and say that, hey, 30K to 28K could be the bottom and we've already touched it. If we bounce, it's going to keep going up, right? A lot of people on YouTube, Twitter, whatever, Twitch are going to speculate that. A lot of other people are going to say that, hey, you know, this could keep going down even further and we might see the price hit 25. And these are the reasons they're going to make those decisions. They're going to make those calls based on looking at Fibonacci's like this and finding out where are the long-term golden pockets. Right now, the long-term golden pocket is here. So we will keep this on our list and we'll keep looking at it for now. We'll focus on this until we know that a bottom has actually been reached at a higher golden pocket. If that's the case, if a bottom has been reached at 30K, then we are going to see it recover from here. Once we see that, we're going to know. But until then, we have to be aware it could keep going down. So what I've done is I've bought Bitcoin at very different levels throughout this drop. I bought some at 50, I bought some at 48, at 42, at 30, at 42, at 39, and again at 35 and 30. So all these different areas I've been buying as it's been dropping. And the reason is because I never know when it's going to be the bottom. So I already have another order sitting much lower just in case it drops, right? I don't know if it's going to, but if it does, I want to be able to pick some up at a much lower price because it's just a value buy. So keep that in mind. You don't know exactly where the bottom is. So the most important thing I'll tell you throughout this whole thing, and I'll keep repeating this, is the fear is what's going to destroy a lot of people. Because one of the things that's happened in all the prior bull runs, thank you Blue57 for following, and anyone else who's followed, I'm going to keep on the video. It's hard for me to acknowledge everybody because, you know, it messes up my train of thought. So the hardest thing for people to do is to get rid of that fear. Because getting rid of that fear means that you actually believe in something. You actually believe this is going to go up. It's easy to believe in something when this is the trend that you're seeing, right? If that's the trend you're seeing, it's very easy to believe in something. It's very easy to invest in something, you know? But when that same thing does this, it becomes a much harder thing to believe in it. So there's a way that people in the Bitcoin space get rid of their fear. I consider it an easy way to do it, but it's not really easy because it took me quite a while to get rid of my fear. But the way that you get rid of your fear is that you understand what you're buying. You understand the use case of Bitcoin. What is the use case? Why does it exist? Why was it created? Why has it gone from $10 all the way to 30,000? Think about the long-term history. Okay, if you look at the long-term history of Bitcoin, all right, let's look at it. I want to show it to you just for context. Okay, so if we look at the long-term history, I'm going to turn off everything here. There's a lot of stuff here. Okay, so this is the BLX. I was doing a lot of work here, but I'm going to ignore this. These are the gains and stuff for the last two bull markets. But let's look at this on the log chart, okay? And let's go long-term. So if we look at this on the log chart basically makes it so that all of the up and down movements are relative in percentages. So now what we can do is we can take a look at this chart in a very interesting way. We can turn off the VPVR. We can switch this to a much longer time frame. Let's look at the weekly. Okay, so this is the normal long-term Bitcoin chart that you see. Hang on, I'm gonna have to group all these things so I can turn them off. Give me a second. Let's group all of these. We're gonna turn off all of the work that I've done so we can just look at the plain chart and I can show you guys this. So this is really important to understand with Bitcoin during a drop like this. The reason I'm showing you what I'm about to show you is because people tend to forget what happens in history and make decisions based on that fear. Now, if we turn all this off, okay, what you're seeing is just the moving average and Bitcoin's history all the way back to about 2011. If you ever want to pull up this chart on TradingView, it's called the BLX, or the Brave New Coin Liquid Index for Bitcoin. I set it over to the weekly and you can get this awesome view of the history. Now, and you can also zoom in and look at very small time frame history of stuff. So basically on the BLX now, we see this entire pattern, right? This is a relative log pattern of Bitcoin going up. What does this tell me? This tells me that anyone who bought from 2011 all the way until here, okay, all the way until this point here is in profit if they held. So whoever held their Bitcoin for this long in this entire time frame, they're in profit. The only people who are not in profit are the people who sold here. These are the people not in profit. That's a very interesting thing. I mean, you got to keep in mind, these kind of drops have happened before, and the people who weren't in profit were the people who sold. There's a reason that you don't realize profits until you sell. So keep that in mind. Very, very important thing. All right. Another thing we're going to look at is the only event that we have that is even somewhat similar to what's happening now. I'm going to take this off of logs so we can see the actual price movement. Now, there's only one time in Bitcoin's history, in the Bitcoin's recent history, then that we've seen something similar to this. So let's go back to that point. That'll tell us what we can expect. So we're going to move back. I'm going to switch the time frame here, make it a little bit longer. We're going to go all the way back to here. Okay, this is March of 2020. All right, this is when we had the massive capitulation event. This is the event from the pandemic where everyone got scared and everyone sold. And I am going to lock this. Let's hide this Fibonacci for now so we can see this a little bit better. So we'll hide this. So if you take a look at this event, look at what happened. Bitcoin was on a recovery uptrend towards the end of 2020 or towards the end of 2019 and upwards to 2020. Then around this area here, and keep in mind we're on the 4 hours, so we're seeing a more granular view of this. Then what happened is that people started getting scared in this entire time frame. This was the beginning of the fear. It started dropping. As this happened, the fear started beginning. We had a global pandemic. That global pandemic scared people to no end, and there was a complete liquidity crisis in every market. Bitcoin took a nosedive. It went all the way from 9,000 to 3,000. Let's look at what kind of drop that was. We are talking about a 60% drop, all right? Now, that's from here, right? That's after the fear event began. If we go back to the actual top up here and we look at how big of a drop this was truly a 63% or 64% drop. That's how far down it went. Now, this is the closest thing we have to what's happening today. And look what happened. What happened here is that the price dropped down to a certain level where it became a value buy. Once it became a value buy, the price went up. People started buying. And a lot of the people that bought here or that kept holding because they wanted to sell, they started to get scared again here or wanting to take profits, and it dropped again. Now, what does that mean? If anything like this happens again, it's very possible that we'll see a recovery, but it'll come with another downtrend. The downtrend will continue. That means that if we bottomed out at 30K and we're back up to 35, we could go up to like 40K and then come back down to 41, come back down to 35, and then go sideways until an actual massive recovery begins. Now, the massive recovery here was a lot slower, right? Because people were scared. So it took about from March 13th to March 28th to 22nd, about 2-3 weeks for Bitcoin to go up by 50% or go up by like 100%, right? It went from about 4,000, not 100%. So it took about 2-3 weeks for Bitcoin to do a total of 75% in the upside, right? Or 80%. And then after that, it went sideways for a very long time. And actually, what I was doing during this time is I was waiting to buy. So I actually started buying Bitcoin here. That's where I started. On this wick. I had an order sitting at 4,000 and I bought on this wick and I kept going. I sold that Bitcoin at around 5,000 and then I bought back at 6,000 because I was scared. At that point, I still had fear. So my fear caused me to miss out because I bought Bitcoin at 4,000, sold it at around 5, and then bought back at around 6, unfortunately. So there's a reason. It's because of mistakes like that that I learned not to be scared once I actually understood Bitcoin. So the real key here, if you're freaking out, figure out your financial situation. You got to figure out what it is you want to do. This is not going to be an easy time for anybody. I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm just here to give you an understanding of how a lot of the people that have been in this market for a long time deal with this market. How do they deal with this volatility? The way that I deal with it is that I've learned. I have learned why it is not wise to sell my Bitcoin. What am I doing? If you're selling Bitcoin, right? Think about it this way. This is another interesting way to think about it. If you're selling your Bitcoin, you're buying dollars, right? You're buying fiat currency. Why would I buy something with an unlimited supply that's being printed like there's no tomorrow? It's controlled by essentially one single entity. Like if I told you about a cryptocurrency like that, Let's say I told you, hey, I'm creating a cryptocurrency that has a 27 trillion supply. It has one person controlling the entire supply. The actual supply cap, it's unlimited, you know, and there's only a few nodes. The central banks, those are the nodes. You know, there's a few other like places where you can buy and connect to those nodes. Those are called banks. You know, you can also go to smaller nodes that don't actually hold any of it, but they let you access it. Those are called ATMs. If I told you about a cryptocurrency like this, 27 trillion supply, 25% of that supply has been created in the last 6 months, controlled by one entity, you would never buy that. That would be the worst cryptocurrency to buy. So why would you sell Bitcoin to put it into dollars, right? You're basically buying those dollars with your Bitcoin. You're selling a more valuable asset to buy. Probably fiat currencies are probably the worst things to own on the planet. That's why that's why you've learned your whole life to earn money and put it in the bank. That's what you should do. The reason we've been taught that is because that's what helps the central banks. It doesn't help the people, right? People in other countries that have been doing that and now are facing the worst inflation crises they've ever seen have seen their value of their money just disappear. People that had invested in Bitcoin at that time when those inflation events were starting to begin have actually held their value. They're actually up, right? Even at this price. So those are very important points to remember. All right, so with Bitcoin, if we have a recovery like we saw in March at the current prices, what we would expect to see is we would expect at some point that this is going to start recovering and it's going to come back to a level like this. At that point, we may see continued fear bringing us back down to a certain point, right? At that point, we should see another form of recovery. Now, it could go into this length. This length that I've drawn out is all the way to June. That's very possible that it takes that long to recover from this. But after that happens, after we reach a certain point, you're going to see a huge buying event. And that buying event is going to take the price up quite a lot. A recovery like this makes a lot of sense for Bitcoin. Bitcoin trading sideways here doesn't make as much sense because that would mean that a lot of Bitcoin would have to be trading hands. I don't see that happening. I see fear dissipating. And as the fear dissipates, what's going to happen is that people aren't going to want to sell. And once that happens, that's when you see this occur. That's when you see a big spike up. Until then, you're still going to have people selling. You're going to have people taking advantage of the drops. This is what I'm looking for. I don't know if this will be the time frame or it'll be a shorter time frame. It's a possibility that it could be a much shorter time frame if the fear, like if you start having companies come out in the next week and those companies have said that, hey, we just bought $1 billion worth of Bitcoin. We just bought $2 billion worth of Bitcoin. We bought 100 million worth of Bitcoin. If that starts happening and we find out that institutions have truly been buying this dip, then the price is just going to go up much faster. Then what you may see is the price go up like this. That's also a possibility. I don't know. We don't know how it's going to happen, but keep in mind, in my personal opinion, this is going to recover, and I think a lot of other assets are going to recover with it. All right, let's take a look at Ethereum now, okay? If you have Bitcoin questions, ask those questions. We'll come back. Another thing to note before we move on, actually, what we're seeing here also is that the majority of the sales happened yesterday at around this level. So you have to understand at this level is when we saw these volume candles. These were much bigger volume candles at around the 10,000 mark. The second portion of the drop where it went from around 40,000 all the way back to 30,000 was about half the volume. So that means that there was about half the people selling and half the people buying, basically. There could have been a lot more people selling and a lot less people buying everything up. We don't know exactly how that distribution occurred, but the majority of the sales happened when the price was between 44,000 and 40,000. So you had a lot less Bitcoin being sold at these levels, and it's already back up to 37. So it's interesting to see how far back we're going to wick, but this wick that goes up that high, to me, that indicates 30K may have been the bottom. It's possible. We'll have to see. But a wick this high is it's a possibility. So we'll have to see. All right. We also are seeing that the RSI is at a very oversold level. If we look at this on a larger scale so you can see it better, you'll see the RSI is all the way down here on the 4 hour. Now let's switch to the daily. the RSI is also oversold on the daily. This is the most it's been oversold on the daily since the March crash. So if you're looking to compare this event with anything else, my suggestion is compare it to March 2020, when we saw that massive drop. That's the best thing to compare this to. The recovery may not be the same. I expect the recovery to be much faster because this time the pandemic is not in the same place it was, and the global economies are printing money like there's no tomorrow. So this is basically the best time to own Bitcoin. People are going to realize that. The fear is going to disappear at a certain point, and people are going to end up buying back higher, unfortunately. There's going to be a lot of people that sold between 32,000 and 30,000 that are going to buy back at 48,000 or 50,000. It's unfortunate. I've done it before. Other people are going to do it this time. It's a hard lesson to learn. It's a hard pill to swallow. Okay, let's move forward. We got a bunch more stuff to look at. We spent about 25 minutes on Bitcoin. I think that was good. All right, let's go to Ethereum. All right, so if we look at Ethereum, we see something very similar. All right, there's a reason I spent so much time on Bitcoin. A lot of people believe that nothing is correlated to Bitcoin anymore. Well, today you learned that everything is correlated to Bitcoin. And not just that, when Bitcoin crashes and when Bitcoin falls, everything else falls hard or even harder. Ethereum did not fall as hard as I expected for something like this to happen, honestly. It did go all the way back down to about 1900, which is a massive drop. But I really thought that if something like this occurred, Ethereum had the possibility of dropping below this 200 daily exponential moving average. It didn't drop below this red moving average, which is actually a very strong sign, to be honest with you. Blue 57, thank you for subscribing, appreciate that. So Ethereum is actually quite strong in this drop, to be honest, right? I would not have expected it to get support before it hit this daily moving average. So the fact that it didn't even go into oversold territory. But you have to keep in mind, there's a very interesting dynamic with Ethereum. Ethereum recently had massive moves to the upside, very recently. And also during that upside, there's reasons for it, right? You had an actual bank start issuing bonds on Ethereum. So we're seeing that DeFi use case is actually happening. Now, as that happens, I think there's a big reason to believe that a lot of other DeFi projects are also going to do very well. And the reason is that not everyone's going to want to use Ethereum. I'm sorry. Here's the thing with Ethereum. The fees are way too high, right? As long as those fees remain high, you have a large amount of investors that want to trade, that want to do things on DEXs, that would like to use financing options. And as long as there are cheaper ways to do that, people are going to go to those cheaper ways. So until Ethereum can do something to capture the rest of that market, the remaining portion of the market is going to be there. And they're also going to gain more market share as they offer features that Ethereum doesn't. So I think that the entire DeFi space right now is going to recover, but that recovery is going to be very much based on Bitcoin. So I'd be watching Bitcoin to see what happens. But a lot of these altcoins, even though they're going to recover, they might have much bigger recoveries than Bitcoin, right? So Ethereum, for example, went all the way down to 1900. Ethereum could still hit 8,000 by December, right? Or even more than that. Now, if Ethereum hits 8,000 by December, whoever bought this dip at 1900, they are looking at returns of over 300%, right? We may not see Bitcoin go, well, actually, we might see Bitcoin go over 300% by December. It's actually quite possible. So Ethereum does have major gains ahead of it should it recover. And there's no reason to believe that it's not going to recover, right? Why would Ethereum not recover from this? The only reason it wouldn't recover from this is if somehow Ethereum has changed fundamentally between yesterday and today. And it's not, neither have a lot of other assets. Ethereum, the only thing that gets me is that it didn't hit this daily moving average. Because it didn't hit this daily moving average, I would be a little bit careful until we are confirmed with Bitcoin that we're in a recovery. Because if Bitcoin decides to take another dive, guaranteed Ethereum's going to go right down with it. So be very careful of that. If it does go any further, I would expect going below this moving average by a little bit and then turning into a wick coming back up is what you will likely see, which means the possibility of going down to around 1550 does exist, right? That would also make the RSI on the daily chart touch the oversold area. So it's still a possibility, but Ethereum, I honestly have to say, for a drop of this size, is looking quite strong. So that's Ethereum. We don't have a lot to go over with Ethereum that isn't going to be exactly the same as what I told you in the Bitcoin section. So we're going to move on. We're going to take a look at EGLD. All right. EGLD, like everything else, has been following Bitcoin throughout this entire time. EGLD's actually been following Bitcoin for much longer. It's been following Bitcoin for roughly, you know what? Hang on. Let me go to my actual EGLD chart. So this is my EGLD chart. It's been following Bitcoin for actually over a month, and I'm going to show that to you. Now, what do we do with EGLD, right? We had a golden pocket at this 145 level. This golden pocket would have held if the cascading fear didn't cause a much more major crash. So now we got to take this Fibonacci much further back, like I showed you earlier. We're going to take it back all the way to the lows of this level. This was a low of around $7. I feel comfortable with that low. Now, you could go further, but I don't want to go any further than that. I think that's a good place to put this. If we look at it here, this tells us that even at this level, we have gone past the area that we would have considered a golden pocket. So seeing us now dip down here, this turning into a wick and the price coming back up, it's a good indication that we would see a lot of support between 90 and essentially 100. Between 90 and 100 is where we should see the support. And if Bitcoin does start its recovery, my assumption is what you'll see with EGLD is something like this, right? This other drop back down to 90, it might not even happen, but you will see something like that. It's going to look very similar to the other assets. Now, altcoins are going to take a little bit longer to recover, but a lot of people may flood some of their money into the altcoins once Bitcoin has a little bit of a stable recovery. And the reason for that is these altcoins some of these altcoins stand to make massive gains. Like Matic, for example, hasn't even look at this recovery on Matic. Matic came all the way down to about $1, and it's back up to $2.17. It's already had a 100% recovery from the low, right? So a lot of altcoins are going to do similar things. Matic is super bullish right now, but EGLD has an exchange coming online soon, right? They have a limited supply asset that functionality-wise is superior to things like Ethereum and Cardano and a lot of other assets. Now, the main thing you'll hear about EGLD in comparison to these is, well, the hash rate is very different. That's right, the hash rate is very different. But EGLD is also being decentralized at a longer time scale, right? So as the EGLD Foundation is taking their nodes offline and stakers are putting their nodes online, you're becoming more decentralized. And it's very likely that as adoption increases, the number of nodes may have to increase as well. So it's scaling at its need. And that's kind of what you want to see. What really matters with it is that it can provide a service that all these other assets can, and it can provide it better. Now, if that's the case, at a certain point, an asset like this is likely going to get a lot of adoption. Now, if that happens, the use case for this could easily take the price of EGLD upwards of 1,000. If that happens, you're talking about 10x gains or 20x gains if it starts hitting from where it is now, if it starts hitting 1,000 or 2,000. So for an asset like this that has a very high upside, and you know the downside is basically you can only lose what you put in, but you can gain exponentially more than what you put in. That's a very good use case. There's a number of assets with this type of dynamic right now. So I think these are the assets that you're going to see a lot of money flowing into at these prices. It may not happen right away because as people are scared, they are going to sell. So that's going to keep happening. And right now we have not seen the volume of EGLD drop, right? The volume going up is still red and it is not dropped yet. So we want to see, when does this volume start turning green and when does it start coming out of this oversold level on the RSI? We can expect some support between 90 to 100, like I said, but you never know, right? This could keep dropping just like everything else if Bitcoin drops more. Okay, let's go back here. We'll take a look. TD sequential, no, but we will take a look at the moving averages. So I'm going to turn off the Fibonacci for now because I want to show you these moving averages. So if we look at these moving averages, the first thing to look at here is that we have also had the major death cross, right? That's expected because that's what happened with Bitcoin. All right. Now when we've come down here, basically what we're seeing is that just to come back to a stable level, we are looking for a recovery of up to 140. So as you see it starting to come back up to 140, hitting that stable level, and when you see this 200 exponential moving average start turning, that's when you know things are looking good. That's at the 4 hour. If we go to the daily, then we're basically seeing that the first indication that things are turning around is once we're over 112. And I'd usually go a little bit above this moving average. So I'd say once we're reaching 115 to 120, that's a good indication that price movement is now moving back upwards. So keep an eye on those levels. They're very important. We have to see what's going to happen with Bitcoin and if this continues to follow. Now I'm going to show you one last thing for EGLD until we move over to Cardano. All right, so the one last thing I'm going to show you here, we're going to go back to Bitcoin and we're going to turn everything off. We're going to turn off all the indicators. We're also going to turn off the moving averages. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to click up here where it says compare. All right, you can't see it on my screen, but it says compare up here. You click on compare, and I'm going to compare. I'm on the Bitcoin chart, and I'm going to compare it to EGLD USD, and then I'm going to hit same percentage scale. So when I hit this, it overlays the EGLD chart on a percentage scale with Bitcoin. Now, the way that you look at this is that you start, if you zoom out, obviously it's not going to work, right? Because EGLD took a massive increase in valuation. So what you have to do is you have to go into a smaller time frame to look at the areas that you're concerned with. And I'm actually going to go to the 4 hour. Once you do this, and you basically want to keep zooming out. When it deviates too much, then you've gone too far. Now you've gone too far. So now I'm going to zoom back in, and I'm going to wait until these line up. Okay, so this lines up fairly well here. Now what this shows me is the percentage moves that are being made by both of these assets. We have Bitcoin, and then we have the percentage moves for EGLD overlaid on top of it. I'm actually going to get rid of the VPVR as well. So let's get rid of that. So when we look at this, we can see that since like early April, we were kind of deviating in early April, right? Bitcoin was kind of steady in its percentage moves, and EGLD took a huge jump, and then EGLD corrected and it fell back in line with Bitcoin. So since about April 18th, it's really been in line with what's happening with Bitcoin. It's been following it very closely with the percentage moves. Now, what this tells me is that we will likely continue seeing this happen. This is why it's so important to see what happens with Bitcoin, right? Because if Bitcoin takes a massive spike up, I'm anticipating that spike is going to come for EGLD as well because they're so closely correlated. You're going to see this happen with a lot of assets. The reason this happens, people don't understand. Why does this happen? Why is Bitcoin controlling the market? The reason that happens is Bitcoin, A, has the highest market cap. B, it's the reserve currency. So when all these other altcoins are dropping, a lot of that money is not going into fiat. It's not going into stable coins. A lot of that money is going into Bitcoin, right? That's what makes it control all these other altcoins because it is the reserve currency. And people look at it as such that if Bitcoin is taking a huge drop, that's the market sentiment because the majority of the money in crypto is in Bitcoin. So if you see Bitcoin dropping and going up and going down, people trade based off of that. And other assets follow that trend because the market sentiment of Bitcoin is very closely related to the market sentiment of other assets. People probably also put their trades based off of that. Like for example here, if you see that EGLD took a huge spike in value, right? But then Bitcoin started dropping, there's a reason why EGLD started dropping, right? EGLD would start seeing a drop here because people are selling their Bitcoin. Market sentiment is changing, and then suddenly EGLD and Bitcoin are back in line. So this happens a lot with altcoins. It is an indicator that people use to figure out what's going to happen with the market. And it's also a good way to decide that you've seen a drop with your altcoins that is now complete, right? That drop may be complete once Bitcoin starts recovering. Now, the recovery of the altcoins, one of two things could happen. It could either be much faster than what we see with Bitcoin, or it could be much slower. Now, I know that's a terrible way to put it because obviously I'm saying either could happen, but it's really true. Not all the altcoins are going to recover at the same pace as Bitcoin because a lot of altcoins are going to be revalued if they were overvalued. So if there were any altcoins that were severely overvalued because their use cases are not that great, they may not recover as fast. For example, you have something like Ethereum Classic. Ethereum Classic in the long term may not see the same recovery as everything else because Ethereum Classic is not used by anybody, right? Ethereum Classic has been hacked 3 times in 2021. It's been robbed of funds. Its hash rate is so low that you can do a 51% attack, and nobody uses it. So why would something like this not be revalued? Like, I would expect Ethereum Classic to be revalued. So be careful of assets like that where the use cases are not as big as other applications. So keep that in mind. Right now, I think Bitcoin, Ethereum, and eGold all have some time for people to start deciding what they want to do. So you have to wait, you have to watch, and you have to trade carefully, make smart decisions, and try your best to figure out if you're a buyer or if you're a seller at these prices. That's up to you. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm just going to say that I do not sell into fear. I sell into optimism. Okay, we'll move on to Cardano. That's going to be the last thing we look at today. And this is going to be very short because Cardano has basically done the exact same thing as everything else. So there's not a ton to see here. The only interesting thing with Cardano right now is that it has had quite a huge recovery. This entire candle from 160 down to under $1 has pretty much recovered back to the 160 level. We have to continue seeing, is this going to be the entire recovery? Is it going to continue dropping? We don't know yet, but it's very possible that the bottom has been put in for a lot of these assets. It's not confirmed yet. So you got to wait until it's confirmed, because if things keep going down, then you could just get panicked and sell again. So who knows? Keep an eye on things and figure out when you think you're a buyer. With Cardano, I'm going to expect that in the long term, we're going to see this one recover. I think that we're going to see all 4 of these assets recover: Bitcoin, Ethereum, eGold, and Cardano, because they all have good use cases. They all have good teams. You know, Bitcoin, it doesn't even need a team, right? Bitcoin could just be exactly like it is and it's going to recover. So these other assets have great teams behind them. They're doing good work and they have great use cases. Those are the things that I look for in assets. And I think assets like this are going to end up recovering. You know, things like PancakeSwap, Polkadot, BNB, Matic, even Zill, like a lot of the Aave, GRT. Some of these are on such a massive discount. Chainlink. A lot of these are going to recover. Some of them will take longer than others. Some of them will be repriced for some time, but they are going to have recoveries. So that's my take. Take it as you will, not financial advice, but I think this is the time for people to get into the assets that are worth being in, right? A lot of things like Dodge and Shiba and all these shit coins, they may not recover from this. And if they do recover from this, there are going to be people that have taken heavy losses, because a lot of people in those assets don't know what they're doing. I mean, think about SafeMoon. SafeMoon, when you sell, you take a 10% loss. Right? No matter what price it is, if you sell, you take a 10% penalty tax. Can you imagine a market drop like this, how scared people would be? And when they sell, they're losing an additional 10%? It is unreal. And I've been telling people not to buy SafeMoon for so long because those economics, they don't work. Eventually, everyone's going to get out of that thing and it's going to crash like there's no tomorrow. And you know, unfortunately, people are, I guarantee, even if it is going down now, people are going to buy back into assets like that, and they're just going to be the next cycle of people that end up losing money. Some people will buy low and sell high. Some smart people will do that who are not risk averse, but then some people that don't know what they're doing are just going to buy, think that it's going to keep going up forever, and then they're going to get crushed. Okay, Cardano, like everything else, I said it's likely going to recover. We're seeing a lot of sell volume, so we want to see that change. We want to see the volume candles on the 4-hour and the daily go green. The key things that I notice with Cardano right now are that we see, and you know what, hang on, let me go to my actual Cardano chart. So the key things I see with Cardano right now are that on the 4-hour, it's oversold. And then if we switch over to the daily, let's go to the 1 day. It is actually, wow, surprisingly, on the daily chart for Cardano, even at this huge of a drop, it is not close to oversold. So Cardano, technically, for a massive drop, does have more room to go. It's a possibility. The reason for this is because Cardano has been repriced so high. So even though it has a lot of room to go for it to be oversold, it's unlikely to see that. And the reason it's unlikely to see that is because a lot of this has been repriced based on the Cardano use cases. So could it happen? It's a possibility that it could, just like the other assets, drop below this 200 exponential moving average, but it's unlikely for it to happen, right? It's more likely for this to recover if Bitcoin recovers. Bitcoin right now is the key to the entire crypto market. So keep an eye on it. Certain altcoins are going to recover faster than others. They may even recover faster than Bitcoin just because they are so bullish right now, right? So something like Matic may come back to being in positive much sooner than everything else. I mean, as you can see, it's almost back to where it was before, like when this drop just started. It's almost made a full recovery back to it near its all-time highs. So certain assets are going to make recoveries like this because they are very bullish. But right now, I think is when you're going to see that Bitcoin dominance is going to start going up again. You're going to start seeing Bitcoin, and let's take a look at Bitcoin dominance. Yeah, there you go. So you see Bitcoin dominance, it already took a candle up. As the altcoins start recovering, it's going to go down. But I think over time now, because a lot of altcoins are going to be repriced, Bitcoin dominance is likely going to start its uptrend during this entire recovery event. So keep an eye on that. Bitcoin dominance had to reach a bottom at some point, and I think we may have seen that bottom now, and we're going to start seeing the recovery. There's no reason that it won't drop again, but at least for a while, I think we're going to see Bitcoin dominance continue to slowly rise. So keep an eye on that. Keep an eye on everything else as well. I hope the advice here had helped. And remember, it's not financial advice. The advice I'm giving you is just on how to navigate these markets. When it comes to buying and selling, I'm not telling you what to do because everyone's choice is different. I'm not going to tell you what to buy. I'm not going to tell you when to buy. I'm not going to tell you what to sell or when to sell. You got to figure that out on your own. The only thing I can tell you is what I'm doing. And I can tell you that my cardinal rule is one that I read in a book by Warren Buffett. And that rule is buy into fear, sell into optimism. I'll leave you with that. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Make sure that you make sure you subscribe, follow me on Twitter, follow me on Twitch, and I will talk to you soon. Peace.